Ladies and gentlemen, special episode. I'm here with ADC connoisseur, the sniper, the German sniper, as he was called in the past. Are you still called this, Mr. Elias Lip, the German sniper?
Jesus. I think I don't know what to say about this.
Maybe you don't like German sniper?
No, I like it when I was playing Ezreal. Maybe this came in more. I mean, with Caitlyn, it's kind of easy, I think, to snipe people.
You know, it's weird when I try to filter my brain about your champs. It's like I see all the classics. For some reason, like the period when I for some reason I have this memory of you playing Rise, but
Yeah,
that shit fucking,
right.
I don't know why this sticks in my brain. Ladies and gentlemen, this video is supported by Raid Shadow Legends. If you have not already downloaded Raid Shadow Legends on your iOS, Android or your desktop device, allows crossplay, this is going to be the ad that convinces you to press the link in the description below. The game currently has 700 plus champions with endless customization options through masteries, items, and artifacts, and so much more. The game has regular content updates, raids changing and evolving through new game modes and quality of life updates that make the game even better. For me, Raid is the perfect second monitor game / time sync to always have on, progress through the game and increase the power of your champions and whatever downtime you might face in the day-to-day. And boy, we know there's plenty of downtime with the delays and all that jazz. What? I chose Elaine as my starter. Most guides recommend Kale, but you know, for me, Elaine just, let's be honest, she looks a little bit, you know, let's call it cooler. Yes. Currently, there's an active promo. If you log into Raid 7 days between August 22nd and October 23rd, you are awarded with the free legendary champion Sun Wukong. All you gotta do is log in. And we know on this channel already that Wukong is broken. Try the game now for free, but make sure to use the code JTSkin to get the Stag Knight and a skin designed by JonTron as a free boost. The QR code and the link in the description below also offers you a neat in-game pack. If you want to win, you better take every advantage you can get, baby. I am saving my gems up right now to make a sack clan, so you better come and back me up with the link in the description right now. Right now! Do it!
Actually, I was thinking about it. I feel like most people have like a signature champ. Like Hansama, he plays like Draven. Maybe that's just it.
What
Maybe
is your
it's just
signature
not
champ?
Draven. Yeah,
I
was
feel like
thinking
Caitlyn. Caitlyn would be like...
I think I really like Caitlyn, yeah, but I feel like when Caitlyn is OP, she's either kind of first pick or banned very often.
Yeah. I remember you played Caitlyn when no one else played Cait too, no? I remember like with Ignar, when we lost against you guys on the level 1 invade.
Yeah, sometimes when you support really just like Morgana, you just pick Caitlyn. I don't remember if it was that strong in that time. I would say Zeri probably is like recently, or at least last
no, for sure.
like huge.
Yeah. I think like it was weird because people didn't think, like there was a period in Europe when people were delusional about Zeri being OP, and I think you like paved the way. Because like you just came in one day, it's like, bro, they're banning Zeri every game. It's like, why are we not first picking it? Okay, let's first pick it. Rock and roll.
Yeah, I think that's kind of I've always tried to put this view on champions. I feel like often there's a certain amount of level you need to reach on the champ, why the champ is OP. And in Asia, I think a lot more people are able to pull it off, and I always try to push myself in that direction. The same with Lucian Nami. The same with, I mean, yeah, in Europe, Sivir was, I think, more prioritized by a lot of team at first.
Yeah.
Because it was maybe more straightforward, the way you would team fight, because you don't need to move as much, you just need to hit. But
For sure.
But I also like to play Silver, but I think Zeri was just very, very OP at this time.
I think Samira was also like, you were pretty fast on learning Samira, playing Samira, like when it was really fucking strong, but like people were lagging behind. You remember that game where we played like Samira, Lilia, Riven, like Rel, we had like every new champion in the game.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think with Samira, it was also the time where Duo Q was not nerfed yet, where the changed. So me and Hilly were like completely no-lifing Duo Q, flashing in level 1 every game. Somebody would die. and it was really, really fun to play. Now every time I see Samira picked, I feel like it doesn't really live up to the strength of the past of this champion.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's like Nyla and Samira, I feel like they almost fit a similar niche in some way, but at the same time not, because the support pairings are different. But
yeah,
it's just, for me, I really don't like when they release champions that if they are strong, they are going to be broken. Like, for example, Nafiri, I knew when this champion's released, it's like, yeah, this champion is not going to be C pro play, because either it's going to be too broken or useless. There's like no in between. I feel like Samira also is kind of in that spot too.
Yeah, I'm permaban Nafari. I don't know exactly what it does, but I don't want to know.
Nafari. They
Nafari?
actually nerfed the shit out of this champion on 13-17. So maybe it's time to move the ban to do something else. Maybe like Javan, like a Spirit of Sojin abuser. Yeah, did you hear the comment Gumayusi did on what an AD carry is?
I actually read it and then I took a nap and I was thinking about it. Yeah, I think it's close to the perfect. It's a very good analogy. I think maybe the supports being. Maybe you should reiterate it first.
So for those who don't know, it's like he basically claimed that AD carries are the egg that you put in a ramen bowl. And then he claimed that mid-top jungle is basically the soup and the noodles, which is like the majority of it. And then he said that the support is just dried vegetables.
Which was crazy.
Which I don't know if that's an insult to support players or to the role. I don't know which one it is. Because in my mind, I would think support is up there in the noodle bracket. I don't know how you feel.
I feel like in Asian regions, the top laners have usually very, very high impact. And mid laners, it's like, I don't know, I could name like probably 8 mid laners that are like, have so high impact on the games in China plus Korea. And the support thing, I think in Europe, support has a lot of impact. Mm-hmm. So maybe we are more thinking of support as like the soup base or something. Instead of the vegetables. But some of the Asian teams, I feel like sometimes the support doesn't have to be like the outstanding player necessarily. Like they're good for sure, but the stars in the team or the teams that have the players that have the highest impact, I think, are often in other roles.
Mm. No, I think what like Gumayusi said in terms of like it sounds derogatory, but in a way it's like when everything else is in place, you get to see like the difference in the AD carry position. I think as the game progresses. It's like it's always like if you like even at watching like LPL playoffs, it's like it's always like in the like deeper end of games, and all of a sudden you see like Jackie Love play Kaiser or like Gala play Kaiser, and then I was like, oh, that's the egg. That is the egg right there.
It's perfect. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about this. I think first of all, him saying that is very. I think not a lot of players could get away with that. Like. Probably if I go 10th place, and I would say, yeah, it's basically top mid jungle that are the important roles, and AD carry only works if they like play at least as good as the enemy. I mean, even I saw some comments to Gumayusi that were like pretty bad, but I think for AD carry to get to the point that he's strong, it depends a lot on the team, and I think mid jungle, of course, and I would count support in there too, have a lot of agency. I think top lane also is right now positioned really strongly. I would more say probably top mid, jungle mid and support are the water, the soup base, and the ramen.
Yep,
but I think AD carries don't necessarily make like the things happen as much. I think they have, of course, every role has a lot of things they can do. I think AD carries can have good wave management, maybe trade well, but that also depends a lot on the support. But AD carry is definitely the most reliant role, I think, of the team being functional or not. Being able to shine. So I agree with the statement, I think, or the analogy for a big part, yeah.
I think a key thing that maybe like some people might miss out is that he's assuming that the level of gameplay is like elite, because I think that's because it's like the level of basics that like maybe the bottom half of AD carries and LEC are going to be way worse than the upper half. And the same thing is true for LPL and LCK too. But when it comes to like the top end teams in the LPL or the LCK, like the top 3, then it's like most of the basics are in place when it comes to like lane phase, pathing choices, all of these things. And sure, you can be much sharper than others within your region in this department, but at one point it's almost assumed that you're doing this well. And when those things are in place, then definitely an AD carry is an egg in the Ramen department. Sure, if you go 10-0 in lane, but then it's like it's not really like a realistic like elite tier game, I'd say. Yeah.
Also, that probably isn't just the AD carry like doing the whole thing.
Yeah. Because it's like if we look at 2021, it's like if you and Hilly like went 5-0 in lane, it's like, sure, you guys are insane and you're better than the enemy, but it's not like realistic in the sense of if we played like against a team that was on equal footing to convert that realistically.
If I had a different support and the jungle is pathing differently too, maybe already it wouldn't happen at all.
No, so, for sure, yeah. Agreed.
I can be a beautiful egg, but it doesn't mean the ramen tastes good in the end.
Reminds me of this game, 2018. I always go back to this game where we like Vitality versus RNG. We're just like ganking Uzi with everything. It's like Rise, push the cannon into Rome bot with water walking, Zinza level 2 gank into level 3 gank, and somehow Uzi is ahead on CS, and he like even killed Jack Troll at one point. And then it's like Sion is 6, he ults into bot. This Uzi just refuses to die. Like we ganked him maybe 12 times in the span of like 8 minutes. And then eventually, like, we swap into top, and Let Me just gives Draven the biggest cash out, and all of his work was just gone. It was definitely like an egg moment, and his noodles, his noodles fucked him up. You've been watching the majority of LPL and LCK, I imagine.
Yeah, I've been watching the games for sure. Yeah.
You got any personal AD carry favorites that you are hoping that the pro views come out when you're watching LPL playoffs? So.
I mean, I love Ruler pro views for sure. I think he's really, really good. I'm kind of sad for Viper. I think when I see him in solo queue and like his highlights and his TikTok montages, I think he is probably like the most gifted player, like mechanically. Not that the other ones aren't like really, really good too, but he is really, really a player that I studied a lot during 2022 and even 2021 when he won Worlds. And I think he is really, really great. Of course, Pace has been playing really, really good, but it's also like a great Ramen, I guess.
No, for sure.
I really love how Peanut plays, actually.
Peanut is insane. He's embarrassing everyone, I think, jungle-wise and in the LCK. I don't think anyone like comes close. It's weird. I feel like LCK jungles, they aren't that exciting in my mind, yeah? It's like Kazo, Viego, Sejuani, and then it kind of dries up, and Owner, I always call him Owner the Boneless because of Vikings, but not because he's boneless, but sometimes how he plays is very surprising to me, Mr. Owner.
Yeah, it feels like some of the players stagnated a bit when they were on top of the world. Also Canyon, I think he's still like really, really, really good, but his games are a little bit inconsistent, I would say.
Yeah, no, for sure.
At least if you compare him to the Canyon that was just carrying every game with Showmaker.
No, 100%. It was weird. Not weird, but I like to touch on the Viper topic. Like when it's weird, they pan over the camera on like Viper versus Deft, and like there's a certain smoothness in the way that Viper moves that you just kind of already know that this guy is so fucking sharp. It's weird to describe, but there is something there that you almost instantly see in terms of just how he moves and the smoothness of his like just character play.
Yeah, no, it sounds weird, but it's true. I think the more you play the game at a high level, the more you can see the small differences, and it's really apparent that he's really gifted. But of course, Gumayusi, Deft, Elk, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone. Gala. Yeah, Gala is really, really fucking good too on like a lot of champs. So it's very stacked, yeah.
100%. I feel It's weird because it's like always coming into like a world championship or an international tournament. It's like everyone talks about like some specific role gap, but I feel like whenever there is a role that becomes the most important due to the meta, I just feel like that the gap will always be there. You know, it's like, for example, at MSI, there was a lot less conversation about top laners and junglers. It's not like Western players are bad at laning necessarily or like pathing options, but when it comes to like very narrow details and very narrow windows in terms of how you play 2v2, 3v3, and all how you leverage all of these small details, I think that's always where Eastern players have been sharper. And then it's like looking at MSI, like the difference between like the bot lanes in terms of like the East and the West, just because it was a very bot lane centric meta, it was so one-sided. And I think it in terms of this conversation, do you know which direction I'm going in? Would you agree with me, or do you have a different take on how things are?
I definitely think on average the players are better individually, and I also think that if like a top tier Asian player plays with top tier European player, he will probably come ahead out of the early game or like have a better impact on the game most of the time. But at the same time, I feel like the games are often won for the Asian teams after that phase. I think many times a Western team can win an early game or something, but the group that plays better as 5, I think, is usually the Asian team, and I think that's why they've been so dominant. And that's why when in the past European teams did better, I think it was not necessarily because they were like so dominant early game. I think it was they really played well as a group. And I think that's what has been missing lately.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back, right? It's like G2 2019, there was a lot of early games where they were actually like coming out behind like most of the time. And then they were like really good at picking off people on side and just creating like really leveraging like fog all the time, never really showing, and really making themselves like really big with support and jungle, which is like now very, very common, but at the time was super unique in terms of how they trap people on side, and they like specifically drafted for it. And then I think they were very sharp in like their fight selection and how they played around like significant spells, like how they kited back together and one another. I think this was G2 was super far ahead on this, and then like down one came in, and then they did this better than everybody else. And now the game has been relatively the same, I'd say, for the longest time, but everything has just become more precise. Yeah.
For sure. But I mean, even if you look at like the very high stakes games like Worlds Finals, for example, it's not necessarily that the games are really snowbird early game a lot of the time. I think it's a lot about, or even if a team falls behind like DRX, if the group knows like how to navigate through the different game states well, I think this is usually the team that's the most successful.
For sure.
It's much more appealing to like look at individual skill as well, of course, because you see Asian players do things that a lot of Western players don't do. I mean, some do, but in reality, I think the games are more decided by how the team plays than necessarily like big individual lane games all the time.
Agreed. There's like definitely games that are over before that gets proven, which is sometimes disappointing, but it's like the devil is always in the details. I think like, for example, like the EDG Damwon finals was like very. It's like if a pro player or whoever is like knowledgeable about the game watches that game and like has like a good sense for what the strengths of both sides are and what the next decision should be, it's like everything was like so painfully precise. It's like there was no inefficiency. It's like, oh, they are weaker on side, they're gonna push past the point, regroup around mid, retake, and then when the enemy shows, they're gonna play. And it's like there was a clear like dance where both parties is not stepping on each other's foot. You know, there was not like something that was like mistake driven, like someone gets caught on side for no reason at all because he over pushes, or someone gets cancelled on a recall because he bases wrong and is just late to the Drake, like disturbances like that, for sure.
I think how polished people are around these situations that reoccur every game, like the objective fights, especially because they are like the most important dragon fights, or even herald fights. I think, I'm not sure, this is my theory, but I have a feeling Asian teams, when they scrim each other, probably have a lot of repetition in that, and it's more disciplined. I would assume, but I think a lot of these objective situations happen much more in stage games than in scrims in Europe. I think scrims in general are much more decided by individual skill, I think, than official games, because people play more carelessly on both sides, so mistakes can be exploited more easily, and they also happen more often. But the way teams team fight and the way people play the map is what usually wins the official games much more often. And I feel like Asian teams, maybe because they play more games too, like with the more best of threes, more best of fives, or just how they practice, I guess, and how they practice in scrims. I feel like this is watching like an Asian dragon fight where everyone plays well happens way more often than watching it in the West happen, I think.
Agreed, yeah. I think it's weird because I had this conversation with Wipo too, and it's something that I have reflected on this entire year. I feel, I think, like the approach to practice just has been wrong for a very long time, where there are so many things that you can prepare before you scrim that teams have assumed for very long that they should fix within scrims, and it's such a inefficiency, whether it's game concepts or it's laning concepts or matchup information and knowing which direction you want to head in draft. I think from my experience working in Korea, because I had a roster of 16 players, and the barrier, like at one point I just made the decision, it's like we're gonna commit to U5 and we're gonna just make sure that we commit into these 5 players, because there was an issue in the previous split where the previous coach before me was just like, oh, you played bad, I replace you. And then it was just like fucking musical chairs. It's like there was even at some point, it's like players didn't even play bad and they just replaced them. Like no matter what happened, they just got replaced, bench, and they just went around in circle, and then they just ended up like borderline last place. And at some point I just made a commitment, but I noticed that the standard for what it means to be like a good player or like a player that is deserving of a job is so damn high. It's like in terms of what is considered like okay for you. It's like if you imagine yourself to be a pro player, these are the things I need to have in place and know. And the research about the game and also the gameplay side, it's like knowing what to play, knowing how you need to play the map. These are things like that the players took for granted that they need to have in place. And I think that already like helps scrims so much to the point where you can actually work on the things that matter rather than sitting there and review and it's like, oh, one player made this mistake that broke the whole game in half, you know? And I think it's like, for example, us here in the last year that we worked together, 2022, we had no time, and then it's like 1 week before the split starts, we were just scrimming, and then it's just everything is kind of just fucking piss random, and it's like what it means to be a pro player or a teammate or what you need to bring to scrims was just like, you know, everyone had their own idea of it, and then there's fucking clashes that come up and just inefficiencies that come up, and then eventually scrims are just better off cancelled.
Better off cancelled. That's a good. I don't know. Yeah, I think what you just said was like doing things before practice. You touched on all the in-game things, which I think you can learn outside of actually just playing the game or preparing. But what is the most important thing, which you also mentioned, is the mindset. I think going into the scrims, like what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, what is expected of each person when it comes to scripting. I think that's probably I think that's the biggest problem, honestly, in Europe. The amount of unpreparedness and like not taking it as seriously as it should be taken. I think that's just the big blockade from improving most of the time. Because even if you, and it's in every team, I think to more or less extent, I think the teams that can hold themselves to a higher standard are the ones that usually reach a higher level. But in the same way, also team dynamics are really complicated to navigate. Of course, everyone is really different, and I think that's where, everyone just has to be pretty open, I think, to like explain what they want from their teammates and what they want to give also.
think it's also one of those things where it's like a long time ahead of time. Everyone needs to agree what it means to have good practice, like what it means to be a pro player, what it means to be a teammate, a good teammate, a strong teammate. Like what do you envision a good team to be? It's like, what are your goals? Like what do you want to achieve? Like what do you consider a good team even? Like what do you consider a good team? Like what is a world champion to you? Like what is it that make them good? It's just having conversations about these topics and aligning, and then having the coaching staff really making sure that each day is really honed in to what everyone has bought into at the beginning of the season is so crucial, because everyone's aware that you'll run into issues down the line. But I think setting up the day-to-day to really reflect on what you as a group believe is important for you to do well, I think is crucial. Because it's like always the same conversation. It's like, oh, this team is doing so well because they're having so much fun together. Oh, they're spending time together, watching the game and studying the game together. And in scrims, they are trying very hard because these things are in place and they are all in agreement in terms of what they want to achieve. Because it's like usually when I look back at the teams that like were doing well, usually it was because there were like the majority, or like I had a player that I could work through, and then through that player, we became a majority, so we just moved everyone in a way that even the naysayers couldn't say nay, because they would just follow the momentum. And never from the perspective of, oh, we are 5 and we're all committed to the same thing. It was more like, oh, I'm working with this player or these 2 players, these 3 players, and then we're moving the team in some direction, you know?
Yeah, which is also natural. I think there's always people that take more initiative in shaping the team and people that are more part of the team, or like just become the pieces that are envisioned. I think that's I think that's usually what happened in I mean, we were also in the same teams, but that's usually the process, I think, as well.
No, 2022 was a weird one, because it's like I think everyone was so capable individually, but everyone had some similarities in terms of the ideas of how we should play the game, but also a lot of things were so different. So it's like at one point it was better to just make a fog of war and just make everything seem as good as possible, and then we were just professionals on the day of execution.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's also a thing. I think what people say, what they want, and what people actually do is often very different once the stress comes in or time kicks. I guess that's the key role of the teammates and also the staff, to make sure everyone is accountable in some way. But I also feel like it's Europe people sometimes. I mean, I'm not talking about anyone specifically or anything, but I think there's often a culture of like not trying can be cool. I think G2 was doing this like more like, we are like not even doing this like before, and we're still winning everything, or like we are doing this. And I think it works for a lot of people because it also takes a lot of confidence to do it this way. But I think if that is like the mindset of the team, maybe I think it gets to a really problematic point when it's like not so cool to talk about problems or to have these difficult moments as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like it takes a very specific person for that to be like functional, because it's like the G2, like even though they had like this cocky attitude about them, and sometimes like the brand like really oversold it, when they lost, they knew that they had to sit down, or like when they were playing bad, they really sat down and figured shit out, you know? They didn't fucking let anything go.
No, for sure, it was a lot more on the outside than inside.
Yeah.
So they were trying very hard.
For some people, I can imagine. I know a lot of people. It's like when they risk their own ego, they feel more incentivized to do better. You know, it's like,
yeah, of course.
You bet more on the line, and it's like, oh, okay. Now I need to try hard because I said the shit about this other player. I need to fuck him up. You know, it's like the fucking Michael Jordan thing. It's just fucking make it personal somehow. But I can definitely agree with the idea that I can see that someone might look up to that and view it the wrong way altogether, you know, and
Yeah.
be worse because of it, for sure.
Which I wouldn't say was like our main problem in 2022 at all. I think it was a lot of things coming together, some more obvious than others. I think, like you said, some of the ideas were similar, but a lot of them were also very different. And it was hard, I think, to create that bridge or that trust, I think, to really give like a big benefit of the doubt. I mean, with Hilly, it's always, you need to give him a lot of trust. And I think he will repay you like every time, basically.
Yes.
But that's also a big step, I think, out of your own comfort zone, because playing with Hilly also takes that you will have games where he does something that doesn't make sense to you and it will be bad and you will lose the game. But at the same time, I think when it comes to playoffs and these series, I think you can't really ask for much better support than Hilly.
Yes. No, he has a very unique process.
Yeah.
100%. Like I can't relate his process of improvement to like anyone else. I think it's like closest is maybe like Jizuke. He just needs to like sprint it for a bit in scrims and in solo queue, and then he finds some mystery through it, and then he can be like precise. It's like it's interesting because I think for us that year, I think we had so much negative momentum built up because it's like Spring Split started so fast, nothing was talked about, and everything just happened as things were moving. And when things begin to move and you play those, like, when you begin to play the LEC matches, it's very easy to do very short-sighted and short-term decisions. I think if we took like time or had the opportunity, because there was like, I remember there was issues with like Humanoid's contract, and there was like sitting
Wunder was last second too, I think.
Yeah. It's like Wunder was also signed super late, that too. And then
the Whiplash of that Worlds too, I think it was like a really tight schedule, I think, and was really difficult.
And we had the messiness with it's like we were supposed to move office, and then we didn't move office. I think that was also like really, that shit was also like giga draining. You had to travel like fucking 2 hours every day, and we stayed in hotel, and it's like it was a lot of things that really cut into the time. And it's like sometimes you work in a way that is inherently negative, and then I think when you're in a dynamic, certain people can build certain images of others, and then it becomes so tough to break that, because it's like you want to grow and you want to move in a different direction, but if other people around you are working with an assumption about you, then it becomes a lot tougher to actually grow. And I think that trust needs to always be in place, that if you're working with something, you need to be able to imagine this person being the absolute best in his position. Otherwise, I don't think it really works, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, also, I think if you look back at it, like we definitely, like a long season together would have helped us a lot, because just me and Hilly were like we knew each other really well, and we worked our own way, well, I think, but we also have like our own specific things we want to do. And then Humanoid just came from Matt that want to splits, and he of course has like a very good idea of what he wants to do in the game and how to lead the team. And Wunder just came from G2, where he was for 4 years, I think, at least with like 3 of the same players.
Yes,
and Perkz too for 3 years or 4 years even, I don't know. And then Rastok, I think, also came from a team where the team was like, I think they were all living together in a gaming house.
Yes.
Like, Misfits was one of the only teams or last teams. And then he was alone as well, and it was pretty, I could imagine it was difficult for him, of course. So it was a lot of different ideas, and I still remember, I think we did like a few online scrims, and I was so excited for the roster, because I thought all of them were really good, and I still believe that, but I was so disappointed by how we played, because I have like completely a different process probably than other people, because I was playing like quite a bit at that time, and everyone like was going through their own things, and of course it's a completely new team, and I think we lost like our first games, and I knew that we had a lot of work ahead of us, but our time seemed really tight already.
Yeah. Because exactly in that like is where alignment needs to happen. It's like the first day of Scrim. It's like what are people bringing to the table? And if like already from day one, it's like, let's say you brought in like good form, and Hilly likes to start slow, and then Razak has a certain way of doing things, and Wunder likes to start slow too, or whatever. Like if there's misalignment already there, it's like you're already wasting like time. And it's like we also had like other issues that like of course plagued our spring, but I don't want to like publicize that because there's no point in that.
No,
but
of course, yeah.
it was a tricky one. And then at some point it's like when the wounds of the past are so deep, you need to it's like we had to make the decision to hold on to what we have rather than risking it all to building something greater. So there's like certain things that were in place that were inherently like not good. It's like how quick we were to like abandon scrims or whatever. It's like this was disgusting on many levels in terms of what I believe like what you want to achieve in terms of competition and so forth. But in the momentum we were in summer and the position we were in summer, it for the short term, in order for us to like succeed in the short term, it was like just the best decision. But for things to lead all the way into that, there was so many lessons that I've reflected on over the past time now that I haven't competed, that for sure I will never allow to happen again.
Yeah, at the time I was pretty frustrated in that situation, but thinking back on it, I also, I mean, of course, some people didn't like how I behaved. I didn't like, or certain things about what I do. Other people don't like certain things about what they do. And I think in hindsight, it probably made sense to cancel like a lot of the scrims, even though I would have wished we would have done it differently. But I think if we would have done it differently, it had to start at a much earlier point already. So yeah, I also agree with that. I think that was probably the best thing we could have done in these moments. And it worked to some extent as well. We were not, I think on our good days, we could actually be a very strong team.
For sure. Yeah. No, we definitely had like some pretty fucking great games, I'd say. Yeah. I think like eventually, I think like in the series against Rogue, I think like they figured out what we like to do, and I think they just had like a deeper pool when it came to that same level, like that same gameplay idea, that game loop. It's like we eventually, it's like full on draft front to back, and they leaned heavier into that direction, and they had like these pocket support picks, and like Malang did a good job of like disrupting top when we were very bad at it, and then they like secured Herald every game, and
I think that, yeah, for sure.
It was good that at the World Championship, at least the teams didn't scout us out in the first week, so we could grab some wins.
That's true. Even the second week, I still think we could have went 3-3. I think the game versus C9 was very tragic.
Yeah. The bot 3v3 was a rough one.
Don't go. Oh, oh no. That happens. Yeah, I think Rogue naturally was fit in this meta. Not to take anything away from their work, because I think in the past they were actually a team that had pretty good scrims, like pretty disciplined. I think they had other issues before in the playoffs. But I think Malarang's playstyle of like disrupting lanes with these champs like Poppy, Trundle, Javan meta. I think you couldn't ask for something much better. And Rasok was also really good at these champs later on, like once we started getting into our flow. But also Trimby is like went like, I would say, one step further in this range meta. I mean, I think Hilly and me played these lanes good, but I think he naturally has a preposition, I think, for these champions. And of course, Hilly is amazing on so many champs, but maybe his range champs are like not the deepest he can go.
Yeah.
And I think that gave them an advantage, because I mean, Humanoid, Larsen are both great mid laners. I think they play more similar than many people think, maybe.
Mm.
I mean, I think Marek pressures like harder, and I think is playing more aggressive. But in the end, both of them are high impact players in their own way, and they are both good on control mages in this meta, which was really important, I think. Akali Silas. So yeah.
I think like Humanoid, I feel like always in terms of laning, I think he's always been like so crazy good. But
I agree. For sure.
But he plays quite static, you know. He's not gonna go somewhere in a lot of cases unless he's in the mood. Because sometimes he was in the mood. Sometimes he was diving lanes with Victor level 4, but in a lot of cases he's not in the mood.
I think he got the Rise TF down as well. I think he's super fucking. I mean, I think he's a really well-rounded player. I think like if there was like categories, I would give him like a 9 or 10 or 8 in like most of them.
Yes.
Just sometimes he ins randomly, but everything else I think is really great.
Yep. I think I always kind of call him European Chovy, but Chovy is beginning to go on that. I always call it when mid laners they begin to spread their wings, because it's always like a mid laner is always like a super giga strong laner, and then they realize, shit, I'm losing games against these other mid laners that are actually, you know, willing to sacrifice to gain more. And I feel like Chovy is on that arc now, and he's like seeing more of what he can impact elsewhere. Because like Showmaker went on this arc, Faker went on this arc, even Caps went on this arc, you know, where it's like, oh shit.
I mean, I feel like Caps was always everywhere. I think Caps is. I feel like when I play against Caps, he wants to have the highest impact possible that he can have on his champion.
True. But I feel like 2018 Fnatic, I feel like everyone came to him. Rather than him, like 2019, I remember, or like 2020.
Yeah.
Like 2019 when they beat Damwon. Like he's fucking playing Yasuo mid and he's just fucking pushing, going top. So Wunder's playing Rise against Irelia, and Showmaker is like, yeah, I have perfect CS, but it doesn't fucking matter. Like, what am I doing with my life, you know? I think that made him like rethink. As at least that's how I imagine, you know, this little anime movie I have playing in my brain about these players that I don't know.
I mean, also the team he has is also probably a big reason how he thinks how he can impact the game the most, right? If he has like Reckless, who was really good at a certain way of playing, and like Whip or Source, who don't necessarily need to be played around, it makes sense that everyone should just come to him and set it up for him, especially because it was a lot of the time was front to back in Summer Split, I think. Maybe it's like puberty, you know, like when you're like a teenager, you want to win your lane as hard as possible.
Yeah. No, for
sure. Then you become a man and you are taking care of the family, of the map.
No, 100%. Puberty, spreading your wings, whatever you want to call it. I know exactly what you mean.
and losing your lane and still crying, that's just being a child.
100%. I accidentally clicked you away. I have to have the Discord open. But now they see you again. In terms of now, LEC, you've been keeping up. Sometimes you swing by the sack, but then I feel you notice, oh shit, there's way too many fucking people in here. Then you silently disappear.
Too many people sometimes, which is no problem, of course. I don't need to be there. And it's also, my mic was really bad, I think. And sometimes I feel like I'm saying something. I'm not sure if people can hear me, and that's an awkward spot to be in.
Yeah.
You're not sure if people understand what you're saying. So, yeah. No, I watch all the games. Basically I watch all the games. Sometimes I watch highlights, but mostly I watch the full games.
So it's not too painful. It's like the wounds have healed. You've come to terms with the year.
No.
No.
But it is good motivation, I would say.
Okay.
Especially like seeing like a team win a split is always. I always feel depressed a little bit for like. I'm happy for the people, but I can't lie that it doesn't affect me. Like, of course, I want to do that. But right after the depression, usually I get like a motivation boost of like, okay, my journey to doing that now begins now. I need to start putting in the work now. And when I'm in that situation, I will be ready and do my best to have as much impact as I can.
This has to be like some form of addiction for us, right? Because it's like, I have been fortunate that I've been able to distract myself, but then whenever I see people win, I'm like, fuck me, man, I want to fucking win. What am I doing here? I'm sitting in a chair. What the fuck am I doing? And then like I can distract myself. Like keeping busy has helped a lot. Like I found like avenues in terms of like the co-streaming and so forth, but it's like the downtime is it's like a as you mentioned, it's like there's a pain to it, but it translates to motivation eventually. Yeah.
Or depression. One of the two.
But you are now at the motivational phase. You told me you are trying to get rank 1, or you're gonna get rank 1. I'm saying trying, but you're going to get rank 1.
Yeah, no, I'm motivated for longer now. Like after the last game was over, it was pretty sad, and then it goes in waves. I think some days I felt better, some days I felt worse, and then when I watch the game, sometimes it makes me feel worse, but also makes me more motivated. So it depends, I would say. But yeah, I'm playing a lot, studying the game, definitely.
Okay. Let's unravel the half a year. Should we call it half a year of vitality?
It was 9 weeks.
Because it's like was it 9 weeks only?
I mean, if you count like we had like, so the spring split, I had like 5 days before and I was sick. So, and then this split before the game started, we only started like 2 weeks before, which was a big mistake in hindsight. So overall, it was like 12 weeks of playing, like in a team environment, I think.
Oh shit, that's even less than I realized. Because in spring you guys started in spring you guys started 5 days before, and you were sick. You said.
Yeah.
How come? Was it like the contract thing, or like what was the plan? What was the idea?
I mean, there was like tons of negotiations. It wasn't sure if I was gonna play for Fnatic, but I mean, I don't know how much detail I can get into, but I just didn't feel like it was right, I suppose, at the time to play in this circumstance because everything was very messy, let's say.
Okay.
To not go too much into it. And then it was like selling me, but it's also more difficult. These negotiations can take a lot of time, of like, especially if they have an interest to keep me for maybe the next split. If I change my mind, let's say. And it took a long time, but in the end, they made it happen. And then I was sick because I think it was just a stressful time, and I was trying to stay in shape, but then at the same time, there was a lot of uncertainty. Like either I'm going to play now and I have to be at my 100%, or maybe I'm going to be really disappointed that I have to sit at home and watch another split.
Okay.
So it was
just the
difficult
lack
for me.
of clarity, like you didn't, like nothing was clear. That's why. So everything just happened. Like the business side was just late. Okay.
Yeah, I also sucked to see like other teams do well. I mean, I had a lot of support from my parents and everyone, but it was still difficult, and I think it had an effect on my body. And then it got through. It was like 5 days before. I played like 1 day online, got to an apartment in Berlin.
That shit is fucking. That shit fucks you up, by the way. Like fucking trying to finding an apartment in Berlin, figure out your housing situation.
So I was like kind of far away again from the office, like 25 minutes with car, and you have to wait for the car. Because I don't have my driver's license test. Sadly.
Shit.
But,
you can go again. It's no problem, man. It's no problem.
So, yeah, it was very short. Yeah, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 5 days it's like everything that we talked about before, right? It's like I think this format more than ever, it's like what you do ahead of a split is super important. I think there's definitely a lot of players, I'd say, that have had a habit of like being allowed to start slow or like take breaks, and then it's like there's been many years where like the LEC winner or the predicted LEC winner starts like the first week with like losses, and then second week with losses, and then they like make it to playoffs and they get their shit together, because it's like the ramp up period, you're allowed to just have that as you go through the split. And I can imagine now, at least Superweeks, even in previous years, were fucking tiring. at least I remember it's like you have Super Week, and then coming into next week, it just bleeds into the next week because you like lose a day, and then it's like that block of time where you like lose that additional day, and you have to kind of rush to prepare for the next one, and then you have to prepare for 3 teams, and then you have 3 match days again. I can't imagine that you can make drastic improvements in such a time frame.
I think at this moment, the level individually of everyone was pretty good. I think, for example, Kaiser, after the way they ended in spring, he played like super much solo queue.
You mean after winter, right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, after winter, where I wasn't there. And I think he came in with a really good form. I think, my top side also was pretty well prepared. And I think we instantly had a pretty natural fit in that split because bot lane was working well because both of us were in a good form. I think the meta was still pretty... I was pretty comfortable in the meta, and I think that gave like some stability for us as well because I felt like I had a clear direction of it. And I don't exactly remember jungle meta. I just remember Bo playing a lot of Gragas and not dying in the first week, and I think he was also playing Lee Sin later on and having some really good performances. So I think that favored us as well. His Wukong was also pretty good at the start of that. And then I think, we just also got a 3-0 in the first week, which is honestly like really big in this format, because if you go 3-0, then you can breathe and you can play with confidence, I think, and feel like you're on the right track, because 3-0 is basically you're already in the top 8 if you win one more game.
This was like the Caitlyn Heimerdinger, the Aurelion Sol. I remember you guys had...
Sol.
You guys were pretty good and pretty early, and in that department, it was solid. So it's like everyone was busy with solo queue. Everyone came with form. Everyone was hungry to do more. I always viewed you guys as the team. That's like it was also true. I think in winter as a team that was individually quite good. Besides in winter, the Kaiser and Neod were struggling in a lot of the games, I'd say, and then. Carrying that over to spring, I think that individually, like the team was always really sharp, and there were definitely like games and drafts where I was like, oh, this looks pretty damn free. I don't know if it was during your time. I think it was during your time, or actually no, it wasn't. I remember this game where they picked like Varus, Ashe bot, Cassio mid, and they played like into Udyr and beat G2. I think this might have been in winter. I thought that there was good meta reads that in connection to what the game presented, and good individual play, but then as the BO3 started, it seemed as if the overarching team concepts weren't there, and the lack of identity became more clear.
I think best of threes we still played like I think Matt was slumping at that point, like they barely made the playoffs, and then we played with Astralis.
Yes.
And I think our strengths were just way too strong for us to notice that we have like pretty big basics missing. But we like 4-0'd this stage too, and we looked like one of the strongest teams.
Yes.
And then I think the thing came when we played with PDS, and I think at that point Maokai became more and more meta, or maybe it was meta in winter, and then it came back in spring. And more Vi, Maokai, these kind of champs, Sejuani, if I remember correctly. And I think this was a bit harder for our team identity, because it was also a different patch, if I remember, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe just meta development. And also we were pretty bad at the basic objective setups that usually are most important when the lanes don't snowball or jungle doesn't get a big lead, or the team comp is just way better. Okay. And I think BDS had like a very solid strategy of 5 every dragon, scaling bot lane, jungle mid play like pretty solid, I think, in this split, especially BDS. And I think it showed a lot of our weaknesses. And then versus Mad, the series was a bit closer, but Mad had a lot of momentum already building. And they also were just like better as 5. It was pretty clear that they were much more in flow than us, I think. I think we were much more concerned with losing than them, and I think they were playing in a pretty good state. So we ended up third in that split,
Yeah. No, it's like Mad Lions. It seems like Mad and also BDS. Like BDS, I think what they did good was that they limited risk so much in the way they played, where they would like sack maybe a wave or two or three,
Or
to
5.
or five even to make sure that they are in the right spot, and in that
Yeah.
they're not making an direct mistake. Where I think some of the other teams, like even in your case, sometimes where maybe the efficient move or the efficient decision is to play for more of the waves, but in that process there's more room for mistakes and inaccuracies. And I think BDS were good at trimming that, and then Mad Lions were they just found such positive momentum with like the Gragas mid, the Vi, and the Jace, and they just had like a very strong 1-2-3, like locked in every single game. I think that's what made them beat G2 as well, even though I thought G2 was better at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of like you guys, like from the get go, like the conversation was always it's like you guys are murdering people in scrims. I'd imagine, I would imagine that Bo is the type of player that just fucking goes 10-0 in a scrim lobby, like self-made on crack type of thing. How did the scrims actually look like for you guys? Because in spring you guys were dominating, no?
Yeah, we were very, very good. First G2, I think we were pretty even. We won, I think, the first few, then they won. In playoffs, I think they, or like before playoffs, I think they like had like 2 or 3 really good days against us. But G2 was the only team that was close, I would say. Every other team we were winning either pretty good or like stomping very hard, I think, in that split, if I remember correctly.
And just to like, as an example, like how would the games look like? Is it like 10-minute chop?
Or... some of them definitely, depending on what we played.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, some of them, yeah. But even if the game was going longer, it was not very focused practice, I would say. Also, champion choices can be different in scrims, which hurt us a lot in summer split, I think, too. Some champs just do a lot better in scrims than on stage. When playing with risk feels more free, a lot of the strength of certain champs are enabled that are supposed to take a lot of risk, which can feel really bad in small sample size official games. Yeah, we were a very strong team, I think.
Okay.
I mean, even in that split, I think we had like a small motivation dip after this 3-0, and then we went 1-2 the next week. And I think this was probably the biggest problem. I think our drive as a team or individually, depending, was just not there to really do the best, I think.
Okay. Was there anything like specific, or like, how did that come about? Was the losses just heavy? Were the losses just heavy, or?
I actually was really reminded of the time in Origin where we ended up, I think we played a best of 5 against G2 and Fnatic, and they were both like somewhat close. Like we had chances, but they were the better team. And we ended third, I think, in like, I don't remember how the bracket works exactly. Maybe it was mad, but we were like one of the top 3 or 4 teams, losing 2 close best of 5s to the eventual finalists and winner. And then after that split, everyone was like, okay, guys, like we were 90% there. Like now we just need to work even harder for the next split.
Yes.
And if we put in even more effort, we saw we were close, we can do it. But it was quite the opposite effect, I feel like, where there was less preparation. And then you start losing some games, and then there's more stress, which leads to, depending how you react to it, to even less productive practice, to less individual practice because you need to recover, which leads to worse performances usually if you, depending on the person, practice less, and that just adds up, right? And then you're in a cycle, and then nearly every game is a must-win scenario if you think about it like that, and then you lose that game too, and then it just piles up, and it's very hard in this format. If you need to get yourself out of that hole, and you need to do it fast. But we started 1-2 and we lost like a tragic game in the first week. I think it was to Heretics. Maybe we were like 7k ahead, like terrible draft read. Like we gave them Melio for Nautilus in this meta. I think they had Melio Zeri. They had like full front to back. We actually had some good fights. We came back in the game. We had like communication issues in the early game that cost us a lot, which is also something that we had problems with, of course. and then we lost that game, and then we went 1-2 out of the week, and then I think we played was like G2 Fnatic, who were both on a roll, and we lost both these games, and then every game is like, okay, we kind of have to win it, and I think we didn't perform well under pressure. I think that was also a problem in the playoffs already, where it was to do better, like to reach the very top, but it's also, the pressure is also there when you're doing poorly, because you need to try to get out.
Yes,
And
yes.
it all compounded, and yeah, people are less happy, people have more arguments, people practice less. It snowballs, I think.
No, for sure. It's as you mentioned before, right? It's like how people act under stress is something that in a lot of cases you just need to see, right? Before you really know. And there's some players and some people that are going to be a very positive force, and some great players even can be a negative force in that, and it depends on like the mix of like the mix and the dynamic of how it actually plays out in the moment, because everything kind of feeds into one another. It's like I always say the same example. It's like when I was in Korea 2020, it's like it was so easy. It's like most of the time when we're in split, we have to work 14 hours. We just have to. But how easy it is to work those 14 hours really depends. And in Korea, it was really easy because the energy in the room, it's like you walk into the room, you hear the keyboards, everyone's awake, you know, everyone's just like actively, any conversations about League, everyone's like smiling, everyone's energetic, you know, everyone's just in the type of zone. And if you walk into that room, it's impossible to slack off. It's so easy to just sit down and like be excited about what you do. And in different circumstances, it's like if everyone comes in with maybe you have someone comes in with a hint of like, let's say, nihilism, then, you know, the reaction to that, depending on the individuals you have in the group, is going to be important, because it bleeds into everything else, right? It's like it can be a negative spiral that takes over very, very fast. It's like if the reaction to a loss is hopelessness, then the action that is supposed to solve it will also spark additional hopelessness. Or
just like more pressure. Like even if people have hope that you can do it, if they're under so much pressure that they can't play like in scrims for the most part on stage, it's already like a problem. But also, what I think I forgot to mention is we started scrims more late, which I think was a problem, because
so in summer again.
No, in spring we had no choice, but summer we were a little bit more late than I would have liked. Probably we were not super late, but I think we needed.
How long we're talking about?
I think 2 weeks, probably 2.5 maybe.
Okay.
But which in the old split is like completely acceptable for the most part. Like, of course, maybe could be more, but in the new split, I think with the problems we had, because we were saying a lot, our problems are communication on certain setups and how to play the map together, and also draft ideas were a little bit different. This needs a lot of groundwork to build up. This is not like you need to get better at laning phase. Like you can probably like figure out some matchups in 2 weeks if you dedicate yourself to it. But if it's overarching team concepts, you need more time. And we also had poor form, I think, or some people had poor form individually coming into the scrims, which instantly is like, it's really hard to learn a concept to play through a certain aspect or around something if the form is not there yet.
Yes.
And then you naturally build habits around this wrong thing that works, and you get rewarded for doing it because it works. And then the official games play out very, very differently again.
Agreed.
Maybe I'm being too abstract, but let's say like in scrims, I always lose bot lane or something, or I make a lot of mistakes. So my jungle knows, and he goes bot, he will get fucked. But if he goes to gank top every game, he will get a kill. But then on stage, I actually play the matchup better, and the enemy top plays safe, but the enemy jungle comes bot, and we don't do something like, just to explain it maybe in terms, which was not a problem or anything. But yeah.
No, I get what you mean, right? I think it's like it's what we talked about before, right? It's like the amount of things you can prepare before you actually scrim. There's so much that you can put in place, and when those things are actually in place, then you can actually begin to practice the concepts that you can recreate in every game, regardless of the play of the enemy. Because if you are in a habit of like getting kills or doing things in scrims that are, let's say, unnatural to what you believe is the theory of how things are supposed to play out, this is where like bad habits can begin to build, and you kind of walk into the weekend on LEC matches with a bit of hope that the things that were said in review and were pointed out 15 times that they click somehow.
Yeah, which sometimes happens, sometimes not.
Yeah.
It happens definitely less when people are really stressed. Because honestly, I think we focus on a lot of the important things that we needed to do, but at the same time, individual level was lower. So I think some of the ways we were winning games before didn't happen as much. The meta was purely tank jungle metas, and these are much more based on communication. And I think Bo is really an amazingly talented player, but it was obviously difficult to make work for us, and we tried a lot. Maybe it was the wrong approach, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to play carry champs when Maokai is OP, when Poppy is like high priority, when Sejuani, Renekton, or like something like that is also strong. I mean, you can try it, but we also wanted to learn the game in a certain way that seemed like to be the most optimal strategy, because maybe we could have band-aided it better, is the point to be taken, I guess. Yeah.
From outside, I could understand the dilemma, right? Because the meta was definitely pointing something else. It's like probably if we pull up Game of Legends right now, it's like the 4 most played junglers like Rel, Poppy, Sejuani, Maokai, which is the opposite.
Really
Vi,
well.
yeah, Vi was strong for a very long time. Wukong, it's like sure Vi I think was often banned against you guys, if I remember correctly, because both did play a lot of Vi in spring, right?
And in winter. We were also banning it ourselves at some point. Vi was like the utility champ. I mean, to be honest, like if you would see our scrims with Poppy, it was beautiful. Like Bo can play this stuff really, really well too. I'm not sure. Like it's obviously not one thing if a team goes from 3rd to 10th. Like so many things need to go wrong, which also brought me back to the origin memory, let's say, because it was similar, like from 4th to like last. And we were doing not so bad, and then we started having some losses and individual performance dropped. Like it's just this cycle. I don't know if you've experienced it, or I mean, you have experienced. I know you have, but we managed to break out of it. But it's difficult.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's like if in the process of trying to build more, you lose what you have, the process becomes extremely frustrating, and it goes downhill rather fast. Yeah. I like an example from our time, right? It's like when we beat G2 3-2, and then the second time we faced them, we got 3-0, 3-1 even, yeah. And then the second time we played against G2, it's like we lost in such a like
disgusting way.
This like there was nothing there, and going into that series, I think like the loss that we had, and then going into that series, I think was similar in many ways, but in a very tight time span.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
exactly.
It's like oh shit. Yeah. Oh, this is our problem, and we can't win like that. Oh, we can't fucking solve it. Okay, then we're gonna try to solve it in a unnatural manner, and then the hope is gone, and then it bleeds into something else, and then we lose. We didn't even fucking play the game in that series that we lost against G2. Like we didn't lane, we didn't play. We just like it was like stiff all across the board, and it's like you lose confidence in the things that you believed in, and you lose yourself in the process of trying to solve something, which while there's something telling you that you can't solve it somehow, you know?
Yeah, this is the perfect way to describe it. What you're doing works well, but it doesn't work all the way.
Mm.
So you try to evolve, but in evolving you lose yourself, and then it's hard to even go back to what worked for you. And then you're just nothing. You're
Yes,
just
yes.
trying to just make it work. And that won't work with a team that has been trying to build it the whole time.
Agreed. And it's like performance for sure fluctuates, but the individuals and the group needs to be strong when that actually happens. Because it's like, in order to become better, you need to become a little bit worse, because you need to restructure habits that might be good at a certain level, but they might be holding you back from achieving the next level, right? So you need to like restructure, but in that process, you need to be aware, strong, and the individual player still needs to be fucking sharp, like in terms of like playing the actual champs, because otherwise the concepts are just not honest, let's say, right?
But also, this happens a lot easier, I think, when you start to face stronger competition. Like, let's say you're doing really well and then you play with someone that's stronger on paper and they fuck you up, and then you restructure in a healthy way, because you're not trying to do it artificially. You're just doing what you're doing, like trying to do your best, and then you see, oh, these are the mistakes in it. They're exposing them and we can evolve from that. But if it's like you try to do it, or something didn't work, and then you try something new, but you lose to the people that you would win against with the old way, it can put extra mental things on. Like a team that we would 5-0, suddenly we are losing more games to them, and it feels like we are losing ourselves more, you know?
Yes. No, it's like, it's always... like, for example, our World Championship, it's like, I'm so happy for Europe that they actually get to practice in Korea before the World Championship, because if there was no Asian Games and LEC ended so late, I think that Europe would have been so fucked if they didn't actually get to like scrim and bootcamp in Korea ahead of the tournament. Because that time, like that first initial week when you play against these teams that are so much better, they are playing, like, they have gotten so much deeper into the concepts of how the game should play out, that you face the truth in such an obvious manner, and then it's like after that first initial week of scrims, is like, if you come at it in the right way, you come out of it fucking stronger, right? It's like 2021, it's like that it went the way it did, but it's like in terms of the practice that we put out there, it's like the improvement curve was fucking sharp. Like it was insane. It was really, really good. It's like we got fisted in the beginning, but then it's like, oh, okay, this is how we got fisted. Okay, we need to figure this out. Okay, we're moving, you know? And
I think that was a big strength of Hilly and also Wilpo. And I would count myself in a little bit too, or at least in the process of me and Hilly. I think they are really good at making like actionable things in the game. That like, okay, like Hilly can die like 3 times to the same thing, or 4 times or 5 times, let's say. But he's taking something from it. He will review it and he will take something from it. When it will show up is not 100% clear, but it will show up eventually. And I think that's how a player like this can have such longevity, and even like after, I don't know, like season 5, like 8 years, can win a split again and always compete at least top 3 level for the most part. I think that's a really important quality of being able to see what you're doing, fail with it, restructure what you're doing wrong exactly, and go back into it and be improved and have confidence in that.
No, 100%. It's like what you mentioned there. It's already such a fucking rarity, like that a player can compete at the highest level for so long. It's like there's so many players that in our time we've seen come and we've seen them go, and they play for one split or a year, and maybe they have a great year, and then they never recover, or they come out and they play in the RLs or whatever. It's like to keep being good for over a longer period of time is really fucking difficult.
And I think 2021 was actually, especially that summer split, was a really good example of that. Like, we started off by doing like our certain style with playing a lot around bot, and then we shifted a little bit, trying to play like less roaming. Like we played some Akali and some stuff like that, and play around top side, like around Reinventing, and we had a little bit of struggles with that, but then there was so much buy-in from the team into doing that playstyle with Hilly, Bippo, me, Niski, Adam, and everyone. It felt really, really good to have everyone be bought in, even if a part, like always in the team there will be someone sometimes underperforming or having like a bad game or like bad tendencies, but we were good, I think, at building around that and making sure that even if this goes wrong, like we're still going to do our thing in a certain way and we're going to try to make it work no matter what. And I think we were really, really on the same page for a lot of the time.
For sure. It's like, I think it's like predictability is only bad if it's not good enough. And it's like, even though teams knew that we would play around bottom side, it's like we were so good at it that we would derive value from it, even in cases where the enemy played good against it. And
yeah, and then there was also extra layers. Niski also had, like, once there was a lot of focus on bot side and people were scared about bot side, Niski also had some really good games on Casio or Silas in playoffs versus Larsen, I think it was Rogue.
The TF Ezreal comp was a classic. The TF Ezreal Trundle, the Rise as well. The Niski was good.
Yeah, I think both Niski and Tilly have a really good quality of when the team is on the same page, they can have a lot of impact on the game through facilitating other players well and starting good fights. And yeah, I think Wipo has the same quality. I think Adam to some extent has the same quality, even though of course I had things with him as a person that I cannot respect, or however you want to say it, but he also bought into it. I think he really tried to make it work with his playstyle, which is, he's still doing the same thing to this day, I think, of kind of what we were doing in Fnatic, and it felt natural to some extent, yeah.
Adam was a wild card. I'll never forget, like, he's playing Set against this Korean top laner, How Alive, and then he somehow gets the wave in on 3, and then he goes mid and ganks fucking Chovy with Set. It was so fucking ridiculous, just flashes on him. And Adam had his moments, like against G2 when he clipped Wunder with the Darius. He was the wild card of the team, but we had a certain structure to it that worked for us. It's like, I remember like the reviews where we're talking about how, like, something that is so basic now, but like when we sit down and we talk about how many quick camps people need to take in order to like pressure on the enemy blue side camps, and how we want to set up for the dive, and if we can't set up for the dive because the jungle is pathing into bot, we're going to take his camps. And just those conversations, they were so engaging because it's like all the energy was concentrated in one direction. It's like whenever that happens, that feels so good. You know, it's like everyone is focused on the same thing, and really everyone wants to solve it. You know, that is like the most beautiful thing. It's like that's when scrims feel great, and it's like winning or losing doesn't really matter. It's like everyone's concentrating on the same thing. I think that's so crucial. It's like
I think also I agree with you, because you can also see the growth, and it's the most rewarding thing. And I also think the concept of like having a wild card. If everyone in the team is like has accepted that, like, okay, sometimes it's going to be 0-10, sometimes it's going to be weird roam that catch somebody off guard and it's going to have a big impact. If the team is built around that like, okay, you have this part that just always has to try to be really consistent and do well, and they're also the focus of the team, so everyone knows that. And then you have someone that can make stuff happen, and it can work, it cannot work, but even if it doesn't work, the foundation is like good. But if it does work, then everything falls even more into place, and the other parts are facilitated through it. I think that was something really, really good that happened for us in that run, and it was somewhat natural, I think, to some extent. Yeah.
Yep. Which you spoke about Bo, and we talked about like how the meta was in one certain direction. But it seemed like from outside, it seems like there were moments where there were attempts. Like, for example, the first game you guys played, right? You played Lucian, Milio, I believe, Kindred, and then there's like also Gwen on top of that. It's like the draft was tough to execute, but it seemed to be like you guys were trying something in a specific direction. And then I don't remember there was any like game where Bo ever played any of the outliers, the carry, so to speak. Like in terms of and the commitments that were made, was that like a challenging aspect of it? It's like, oh, should we play what the meta is, or should we commit in a certain direction? And was the issue that you guys were in between, like split in between, it seemed like, from outside?
Yeah, we were very split in between. I think Photon is really, really good at carry champs, and he's not bad at tanks, but he definitely doesn't prefer to play them, I would say. So our jungle definitely prefers to play carry champs, and our support prefers to play melee champs. But now the meta comes into play where in Europe tanks were performing the best in that time. I'm pretty sure like Sion was like...
Yeah, that was like pretty much everywhere, right? It's like even Bin was playing Sion and Cassante and...
Yeah, exactly. Like really tanky champs like Sion, Cassante.
It was like right after MSI, right? It's like...
Yeah. I think jungle meta, there was some Kha'Zix being played. I mean, to talk real quick on the Kindred thing and then to finish the point. Like we always would have a tank in that comp, but it was like Gwen versus Cassante matchup and he had counter picks, so he really wanted to go for it. And I think bot lane, we like dove them 2v2, took all their sums, zoned them off a wave. But then there was like a really big error in communication. with
So you don't have to say, put that on your boy, I'm gonna say it. It's like Kaiser refused to press his fucking spells when you're trading with a Dirk. Like, I couldn't fucking believe it when I watched it. So
yeah. And then after that, I thought he still had it or something like that. And then we were still winning bot, but this bot lane should have been exploded. And I think jungle died to Gragas, like in River level 3. So Kindred carry champs and jungle need to play on curve. I think they need to be able to do their camps and then also look to invade or have pressure and be strong. Because if they offer damage and if they don't win duels or don't do damage, then it's hard to play.
Yeah.
Also, our only engage in that comp was Ahri, and they had like Azir, Aphelios, Yumi, Cassante, Gragas. So they had like really, really good team fighting, and we got a good lead on bot, but we fucked it up. Our jungle got killed, and he also didn't get the kill on bot, I think, on the dive. And our top laner died 1v1 twice, I think, in that game. And mid lane was Ahri versus Azir. So we fucked up, and then I think, overcorrected, probably in hindsight, of like, okay, bot is range meta. If bot is range meta, you need tanks in your team. And we did that, but it didn't work because tanks require good setups, tanks require good team play, and also they require different strength of players. Like I said, Bo is really, really talented, but playing like in English with tanks in this team, and there wasn't too much presence from our support too, probably to guide them. I think both of them were more looking for the other person to connect, I guess. It was difficult, and then maybe we overcorrected by maybe we should have put tank more on tops, but also top wanted to play more carry champs, so we tried that, but it didn't work as well. I mean, scrims were going well, but stage games, I think we mostly tried to play the meta, and it was not working. And then at some point we put Kaiser on more melee champs, but at the same time, if you play like melee support and you don't execute really crisp in the meta where the range champs are just pretty strong, it's also more difficult to win the games.
Yes.
Yeah, synergy wasn't there between mid jungle support as much, I think, especially when we started losing. I think in spring we were more proactive around that, or Perkz was playing like champs that involved themselves, like Aurelion Sol. He would just fly around the map suddenly and get some kills, or Bo was playing Lee Sin with Ahri or with LeBlanc. No, not LeBlanc, with Ahri, and they were like really dominant, or with Annie at some point too. They were doing well at the start. So yeah, there was a lot of meta problems, adapting to it in the right way for our team. And yeah, the more you lose, the less you really want to experiment. Like you want to try to make something. Like if you play this style, you need to be really confident that you're going to make it work. But at the same time, stage games are a lot slower, so other champs are favored, like the meta champs at the time. So yeah, a lot of different things pulling at each other at the same time.
No, of course. It's like if you need to win a BO1, you're going to try to take the route that has less risk.
The route, man. No, okay.
For sure. I'm curious how things would have played out in a way. It's always easy to look at things in hindsight. If it's like in terms of how a roster is built up, it is sometimes the intention of it and the strength of the players of it. Of course, it's like in the long run, I think usually the team that is most suited for the meta is going to win. But I think to a certain extent as well, it's like the opposite you can have the opposite effect as well in the pursuit of tuning yourself to the meta. You can also lose yourself in that idea.
Which was the case. I mean, also I saw like this sentiment a little bit of like, oh, I can't play with like jungle that want to farm too much necessarily, but I personally like it when my jungle has the idea and is like strong in the game and is like good for objectives and knows what he wants to do. But it also has to be the right meta for it, I think. Like if it's like Lucian Nami versus Zeri Lulu bot and you have like a random carry champ and the other one has like a Poppy or something, the carry champ's gonna have problems impacting the game as much as the tank champ, because if bot lane is fat, like a fat Zeri Lulu, it's hard to carry against. And I think in Spring Split it was more Bo on Wu, Bo on Lee, Bo on Gragas, even Bo on Vi, doing a lot of the things where he was strong or he picked good fights or he had a lot of impact, but it was harder for us. Even though I myself like to play this meta, it was harder for us to make it work because in the end, everyone has to have the same ideas and we didn't connect, I think, on that level.
No, for sure. It's like, so for the people that don't know, like usually it's like draft structure and how drafts are set up. Usually the majority of conversation is like what is the first pick and what is 1-2, and then everything is built off of that. And usually those are the strongest champions in the meta. And it's like, oh, you're first picking Rel, and that's going to expand into everything else. So you first pick Maokai, that's going to expand into everything else. It's like if you then become, if you try to become the outlier there, sometimes it works to play with the bans, sure, but in some cases not. And when a Kindred comes into the picture, then everything needs to also change around it. And then all of a sudden, maybe you're playing champions that are weaker in all of the roles, and then you're bleeding all over the board. So there's definitely like a challenge to it, and it requires a lot of like finesse. But I think the fundamental key thing, I would imagine that a regret would be that you already mentioned it yourself, that you would want to start like a lot earlier, and maybe in a world where like the buy-in was there from the get-go, right? Like you, because I think at least my impression is like Team Red and XL, they were fucking 9 and 10th, and then I imagine that they took some time off, and then all they did was fucking prepare for those 9 BO1s that they needed to play, and I think that momentum carried over for as long as it could for both of these teams, honestly, in terms of like the rosters that they had, you know. And
I think that's the story for the whole year for a lot of teams. Like you mentioned, XL, Heretics. Fnatic was last place in winter, was 8th place in spring, did some changes, bought into like an identity. Of course, there's always growing pains at some point. Like at some point the meta changed and the identity was again harder for them in the playoffs, but it is very, very important. And we couldn't reach it. Yeah.
So when I saw that Humanoid is in Berlin 1 month ahead of summer starting and he's already playing solo queue, I was like, damn, he's ready to go. He wants to win.
Humanoid did a lot this year on his individual level. Even last year, I think for a lot of it, he played a lot of solo queue and kept updated. I think the things he could maybe have given to the team could have been more in hindsight, but it's also difficult to manage like different views all the time. But yeah, I think he doesn't necessarily do himself a big favor with how he portrays himself sometimes in terms of like being this like guy, like, oh yeah, I want to go party and stuff, because if you watch him lane, you know he studies the game. You know he knows what good players are doing. You know he can perform really, really well.
So, he puts in the fucking hours. He works hard on like understanding the game and knowing the game. It's like everyone comes with their own strengths and weaknesses, right? I think.
I mean, the biggest. Sorry.
I just want to say he's an interesting pickle. So Marek is very unique. What did you want to say?
No, I mean, the thing I'm most sad about, probably, like on a personal level, is just that this was the time I played with Perkz, and it didn't feel like we had like the time and the space to really shape everything, and what I envisioned, what we could do together, just didn't pan out at all. Maybe in the future there's like a possibility, or I mean, I have no idea what's gonna happen now, but I would have liked to succeed with him and shape the team with him, because I think he has a lot of good ideas. He has a lot of leadership and a lot of passion, and I really like that about him.
I guess that's like an additional layer from just as an outside spectator. I guess it's like now there's been, let's say, I guess 2 years of very strong teams built around Perkz after he returned from C9. And from outside, it's like we can only judge what the results are. But you mentioned, right, his characteristics. Perkz is someone that you've known for a very long time, right? And you were the sub for G2 at some point. I don't know if you knew him already before that.
Yeah, TeamSpeak days, I think.
Yeah, TeamSpeak days. Those are crazy days.
Yeah.
In terms of his presence in this situation, how much was it there? Like how was it to work with Perkz in the context of this stressful situation?
I think he always has a pragmatic point of view, and he also is really invested emotionally, I think, into the situation. He always tries to make it work till the very last moment, and put in the effort, which I see myself in somewhat. I think sometimes I try to do too much, or like try to take on too many things, which in the end can maybe make me feel overwhelmed, or maybe a little bit resentful, like which of course I'm aware of, but I try not to let it affect me. But it's hard when, and I think he has a better process of doing that in some way, keeping more distance to that. But in the end, no matter how great a player is, I think if the team is dysfunctional, it will not work, and no single player can do all of that. It has to be the better five will, or the better team in general. Like, of course, coaches and stuff count too, but I mean, like in the game, let's say the better five that is more connected and also somewhat close individually will prevail in the end. And just look at the results. No one was able to connect the dots.
Okay. I guess like from outside, I guess the expectation that like Perkz has built for himself through his like career is that he would be like that potential player that could piece things together. But I would have to say that I think that being that single person in a circumstance is just getting harder and harder year by year, as the game is the game is not getting harder because the game stays relatively the same. It's more about the level of each player is getting higher and higher as the game progresses and proceeds, right? It's like this is the case with any sport or any game. It's like you can take the example of chess. It's like super GMs of today would smoke the super GMs of maybe 50, 60 years ago, but this is because the era is different and the expectation is different, the tools for success, and they have studied the past and so forth. Like everything kind of layers on top of each other in a way. And now more than ever, I think next year is going to be even harder to be that individual player that pieces everything together, because the expectancy of each individual in a group will be higher and higher as the game progresses.
That's true, but at the same time, there's always... No, I completely agree with you. It's not a counterpoint, but at the same time, from the outside, it still can easily look like that player is the key player that makes everything work. But what's behind that is a group of people buying into it and making that player be able to do it and doing their things well to a certain extent. Of course, like the role of the person that will carry the game, no matter, or like will carry the game and execute the team fights well and play their lane well consistently is probably more difficult than the player who has to play safe and look for opportunities to help that player. But in the end, everything needs to fit together, and that is also something that's important.
Yes, because it's like I think a common like characteristic with some of like the legends of Europe, like the players that have like won plenty and they have stuck around for such a long time. I think from speaking to them is usually it's like the same thing. It's like they know how to win through themselves, and they know well enough how to explain that to others to convince them to follow along. You know, it's like that's usually like the commonality. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's just the nature of team sports in the end, right? Which is also the beautiful part of it, because if you are in the group that fit together and makes it work, and there is this mutual understanding, and you win together, you can also share that joy and build friendships and build that connection over a longer period of time. And that's also the great part. But I mean, there's countless examples of great players that, for example, Viper, he was like in Griffin last place, got relegated actually. Then the next split he was in Hanwha, again relegations. I think he managed to keep the spot. And then he went to EDG, and suddenly he's shining and shining and shining, and you feel like, wow, he's really this amazing player, but no one was thinking that a year ago. People thought, oh, he's good, but maybe his team's bad, whatever. But it can change really fast, and it can go in both directions. It can be from good team to dysfunctional team, or other way around.
No, for sure. It's like individual performance in a team sport. It carries a lot of context, and that's why it's so impressive when players succeed on multiple teams. Like you mentioned, Hilly, like every team he's ever been on has managed to get to finals, minimum. Right? It's like Unicorns of Love never won, but they always got to finals. And then what the fuck was Unicorns of Love without Hilly and Chachi not being in form anymore? And then it's like it was Fnatic, and then of course now Mad Lions. It's like. That when you have a player that is capable of performing in multiple different contexts, like that's fucking hard. Because it's like I think that's always when it comes to like team building. It's like when we brought in Mowgli, it's like Mowgli was cared for by his big brothers and his team in Africa. He was the young guy, everyone took care of him. He could just play the game and focus on the game. And then he comes over to Europe, and then the context is completely just vastly different. And then the expectation that he's going to perform the same is just or better without all of these things in place and all of these things cared for. Was like our mistake that we didn't make sure that he was nurtured in this regard, because now he's put between Jizuke and Cabo, and they are very wild in their approach to the game and how they get the most out of the game, and he took inspiration from them, but this shit didn't work for Mowgli at all.
I can imagine,
it's like Jizuke watches VODs all day and plays less, and then he tops off with some Korean drama. Cabo has his monk status where he doesn't play so much in the off season, comes in first scrim, gets smacked by Alfari, and then he grinds the shit out of the game because he gets so embarrassed, and then he becomes all pro top lane, because it always depends on how hard he gets shafted in the first scrim set. That's how you know how good Cabo's gonna be in a split.
It makes sense actually, but it's also an important lesson for me that I've learned, that I have to learn over and over again. No matter how good I think I am individually, in the end it is that a team decides how the results are going to be, and everyone in the team is very important. Yes. The idea of just like thinking like, oh, I will just join this team and we will do much better, will only work if everyone wants to do that too. And I think it's definitely humbling in a way. I think that also that what you can bring is there and it's valuable, but everyone has to be part of it. And at the same time, that mindset of, okay, you need to be ready for when what you can bring will push a team over the edge, and not getting lost in, okay, yeah, either you get carried or the team sucks. Not falling into that, and instead thinking, okay, I'm gonna work really hard no matter what the result is. And when you get to that point, you can have the impact that helps the team win the split or go to Worlds or whatever. I think that is the key aspect that I learned a lot from Hilly, I think, because I have a tendency that when I see shit going wrong, I want to fix it. Like, even maybe if it's not the right way sometimes, or if it's not, I also got better at that a little bit, but if it's maybe not necessarily my responsibility, or if I just want to try, like, make a difference, but sometimes it's also important to make sure that you bring your part as good as possible and let the other people fall into that way themselves, because you only have that much impact on other people, you only have that much impact on the games, and you just need to make sure that you are at the top of your game.
No, for sure. It's a big part of the process is to, it's like instead of trying to pull people in a direction, is to extend your hand until they are ready to grab it. You know?
Yeah.
I remember like, it's like there was 2019, like Attila and Jackdaw, they had played together for I think like 3 years, you know? It's like playing that long together, you know? It's like, you know, it's like a relationship, you know, some things they build up to resentment and whatever. And at some point I was like, you know, they were very, very tired of each other. And then it's like in the conversations with them, always individually, I say, you need to work in a way to the point where you have to work in a way that you imagine, that you hope that the other people around you are going to eventually also work as, if that makes sense. It's like, if you work in a certain way, eventually you'll be surrounded by people that work the same way, right? So it's like,
hopefully.
you have to keep extending your hand until people are ready to grab it. And sometimes you can pat people on their back and like remind them, but if you try to drag people, you know, that's where like frustration builds up and resentment can be built up too. But
on both sides, most of the time.
For sure, yeah. Because it's like it's very rare. Because it's like it's funny sometimes. It's like there's definitely players that don't try hard enough, but I think a lot of players work really, really hard. So there's a lot of players that work wrong though, and I think that's where like the difference is. Because it's like sometimes when the conversation is about how, it's like, European players just don't work hard enough. It's like, no, I think it's just in a lot of cases teams and players don't work efficiently enough. Like I think this is like the more interesting conversation. It's like,
I would say like probably 70% work hard enough. I think of that 70, like 30% are actually working hard on the stuff they should be working on, and then there's some outliers. But
there's definitely players out there that like spam solo queue, but in reality it's like they're playing champs that don't fucking matter, and they're just like spending time, and they are just doing it because in their mind like this is how they got good in the first place, so they're going to resort back to that. But in reality they need to be doing something different, like study every VOD of someone, or like play different champs, or talk to your teammates, right? It's like
what they need from you. Yeah, for sure.
It's like an additional layer. It's like you're very good at this, right? It's like when we play Lucianami, it's like you actually looked at how Lucianami was being played, and it's like, Lucianami is being played in a way where, I remember I showed like the V5 games. You were also showing Lucianami. We're talking about it's like, we need to set up vision in a way where you can dash on every wave, and then jungle doesn't need to be around mid, because if you are pulling people to mid to contest you, then we can push side for free, and it's a beautiful game. And then it's like, on the other front, I think a lot of teams in Europe, what they do is they're just, this champion is being picked in this region, we should play it too. And then they figure out how to lane because they just spam the champion, and then how to win with the champ, they don't have a fucking clue. Like how many Lucianamis did we see here in Europe that fucking just did nothing? It's like, they're 3-0 out of lane, and then they're just...
The majority, for sure. There was a lot of bad Lucianamis, yeah.
It's like, that's where like time spent is so good. Because I think Mad Lions is also another good example. It's like Mad Lions was so fucking shit in Scrim for 2 years straight, 3 years even. Such a terrible Scrim team. But it's like then Humanoid said, what we did is like we made show 1 hour. We just reviewed like Chinese games, and we just talked about concepts together. And then their Scrims fucking meant fuck all. But they sat down and they got useful practice by practicing in a different manner. And then it translated to stage matches. Because Mad Lions were garbage in Scrims for fucking 3 years straight. I don't remember when Matt was good in scrims.
They were not the best in scrims for a lot of time, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like Vitality, super team. I think that the super team conversation is always so weird because even though a super team is running towards the same risk as any team is facing. It's like you need to set the foundation. You have players that performed under certain context, and now they're going to be in a different dynamic, and they need to perform in that context. And then the additional layer that you have 5 players that you're committing to at the beginning of the year, and then fucking random shit can happen. Like fucking I got hit by a car when I fucking was on my scooter to scrims. It's like shit can happen, It's like, life happens. There's so much randomness in life that can happen, and then it's like the whole team needs to carry that in a way, right? So it's the super team doesn't make you Superman, It's like you face all the same issues as any other team faces, and I think
in Europe, a team is a super team when they have like 5 players that are considered individually good.
Yeah.
But that's like, I think that's a good team. But the super team part comes in when they actually make it work.
No, for sure. I think G2 has done a fantastic job. I like everything I hear from their like staff and from their camp. They seem to have like set up the beginning of the year really, really well. They really set up Yak for success, and it's like they seem to really have bought into, like, the whole staff and all of the players seem to really bought into what they want to achieve. It's like even after MSI, it's like even after MSI, you could see like the switch up in terms of what they got from that. It's like they got beaten down at MSI, and they're like, oh shit, we need to fucking fix this. We need to work on this. We can't get away with fucking winning bot lane matchups we are not supposed to win, and then Mickey just fucking roams the whole map and fixes top and then fixes mid, and like this is things that are not going to be like consistent, and then they like restructured how they practice and how they approach the game. And I think G2 is like a great example of what I think everyone should strive for in Europe, and I think in the long run that's going to be super, super good.
100%, yeah.
It's weird how like I feel like the years when like G2 2019 and then 2018 Fnatic, I feel like those years were also good for Europe as a whole, because I think when you have like a really strong team within the region and a team to beat, it becomes easier to like really like improve and like really have something very goal oriented. You become really, really, you definitely push each other. It's like,
and there's also some stakes in it when like many teams are competing to be like the best. Scrims get more competitive too, or they can get more competitive because you are playing to prove something maybe.
Yes,
I have a feeling a lot of teams maybe give up a little bit more versus G2 when they are getting rolled instead of having that competitiveness.
Yes.
So level of competition is really important too, which hasn't been there that much, I think, this year in Europe so far.
Oh, it's like there's always this conversation. It's like, is the gap widening? I think the gap will widen every time, because every year I think it even in my mind, even the years when G2 and Fnatic were competitive, like 2018, 2019, I think they were heavy outliers. And I think that's what Europe requires. It's like Europe, in order for Europe to compete at a international level, there needs to be a team that is like an outlier in a way where you have 5 players that are achieving like their absolute peak at the time, and the meta is in their favor, and there are circumstances that happen in tournaments that are also in their favor. Like, for example, the MSI win for G2 2019 is a fantastic win, but IG, what the fuck happened to them? It's like it's like fucking what the fuck happened there? It's like, I don't know. I've heard some rumors about the stories behind the scene, but bro, like that was a collapse, because in group stage IG smoked fucking G2, and then they won a tournament off of that. And I think that's like the only way, because in terms of the attributes that make a region strong, it's like, player base, and then it's like having strong players in the first place, because it's like greatness begets greatness. It's like if you have great players within your region and everyone wants to compete and everyone wants to beat that player, it's gonna spawn fucking mini fakers and they're gonna catch up eventually and then they're gonna become even better. It's like greatness begets greatness, and then player base is there, culture is there. It's like having everyone. I believe both in China and in Korea, I think the focus is a lot more on the group rather than the individual. While in Western society, everything is kind of built up in a way where everyone is the superhero in their own movie in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that part is also like essential, you know? It's like letting go of that ego to do something for the group. My point, why I don't know why I went on this into this rabbit hole, but my point is I think the gap has always been wide and it will continue to widen, and Europe needs some crazy outlier to actually compete and to win.
Yeah, to win 100%, to be competitive, I think the talent is there. I think you could make 3-4 rosters that could be very, very... that could reach the level, maybe. Not win the whole thing or be favorites, but be a pretty respectable underdog. But it's also harder for teams to make these teams, of course, because these players are contested. There's bidding wars, there's financial situations with teams, there's everything of that. So it's hard to get like a lot of really good players. Just because you get a lot of really good players doesn't mean that you will be able to compete with the Eastern teams, because they also need to mesh well. But if you don't have really good players, it's going to be pretty impossible, I think. So you need to have that, and then you also need to know how the team is run together, and then you can have these outliers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The format, we touched on it lightly, but now after looking at it for the whole year, because it's such a hot topic, like I understand like the hype part or whatever, it's like I'm not super interested in that. Of course it matters. It's like that the LEC finals is not so hype because of how everything's structured. That sucks and all. But in terms of like the splits, and it's like the day-to-day and the splits, how do you feel now after being in 2 splits? Like what do you think? Do you think this format is actually making Europe better or worse?
I think it's making it worse. From my perspective, I think either the pressure is too high or there's not enough pressure. Like if you're already qualified, I think teams tend to have a harder time staying in that really focused grind. Like let's say you're already qualified, like you lose 10 million games in a row, and then you can still like it doesn't really matter some of the weeks, but also 3 splits for a regular week split. I think the regular split should be for building the team more, and I think it's not really doing that right now because it's 3 super weeks. I already hated super weeks when it was a 9-week split because it was so volatile, and now it's just pure chaos. On the other hand, if teams adapt to it and practice way more in the off seasons, which is necessary now, it could also lead to better, more competitiveness maybe. I'm not sure, because at the same time also it could lead to more player burnout for some players if the off seasons are way shorter and you have 3 splits in a row and tournament. So I'm not sure. I preferred the old format because it felt more hype when you got to the end, that these teams, you have seen them develop for a long time. They are more polished because the split is more long, and the end result feels more, it seems like a bigger thing, right? Like when we were in Sweden and it was like this huge summer split, that felt like a really big thing, you know, like a big final, and all the teams played each other in the spring split. And they came back, and you could see how the teams developed over the long period of time, and you could see these playoff runs. So I think the old split was better for players. For viewers, I have no idea. They have to represent themselves here. I don't know if they like it more to watch this more chaotic format, or if they enjoyed the split more. I wonder if there's an in-between option, because this was mainly made that there's more best of 3s. So, of course, a best of 3 split, like a full best of 3 split, would be amazing, I think, for competitiveness. I don't know if it would be amazing for viewership, But yeah, as from a player perspective, I didn't like it.
I think from the viewership perspective and also the cost perspective, like the BO3, unless it's like if it would be like a double round robin, you would have to like play, like if you compare it to like LCK, I think that the cost for running the studio is so damn high. Like I try to like just estimate it in my mind. It's like maybe there's like fucking 500 to 1,000 people working there in the studio for a show day. It's all the electricity, all the talent, everyone needs to be paid. And I could imagine, like when I was sitting and thinking about this the last time, I wouldn't be surprised if it cost like maybe 300-400K to run a day of LEC with everything in place, which adds up fucking fast in esports winter. This was just crazy smash. I could be very far off in either direction. I'm not so sure. I was just like spitballing some numbers.
Costs are just higher.
Yeah. And it's like it's weird because the BO5s are cool and all, the BO3s are cool and all, but they are still fairly like limited. And I hate the fucking Superweeks. I think the Superweeks are just terrible. And I think that 2 teams go out. I think that's interesting in a way because of how it played out. I don't know if it's anecdotal because it's only 1 year and like 1 year is not a big enough sample size to know. But it's cool that Team Red and Excel like got to restructure themselves and like really come out big. I think that's like really, really huge. But yeah, the BO1s, I don't know if it's like just because the pressure valve is like on a medium throughout the entire year, it really deflates itself when it comes to like the pinnacle moment of what the split is supposed to be, right? It's like into the finals. And I think that there's no like build up, you know? And I think in order for there to be a build up, there needs to be a little bit of boredom, you know, in the beginning, you know? It's like having some weekends and games that don't matter as much, I think is a fine price to pay in my mind for finals that are very, very hype, because now it's like, it's like cool, like okay, we're going into week 2 now of best of ones, and maybe some teams are going to be completely out already. It's like that's fucking hectic and cool, but from a team side, I can imagine that part is shitty. But from what you mentioned before, it's like the practice ahead of splits. This was something that already like G2. It's like G2 when they won with Flakid and Targamas, just because they were scrimming during Worlds. I think that's what made them win the spring, because I didn't think that team was that great on paper, you know. Like, like they were just started way ahead of everybody else, and that was such a massive edge. And I think that should be in place regardless, because I don't really buy into this idea that it's gonna be a different patch when we play, so it doesn't matter, bro. It's like there's so much to fucking practice and so much to be better on, like as a team, that are going to transfer. It's like the game has been largely the same for a very long time. It's like you can watch 2021 World Finals and or 2020 World Finals, and you can see some insane gameplay that you can try to replicate today, and you'll have a lot of fucking success. That's a load of bollocks, you know. It's like
I agree.
It's like
for sure.
Off seasons are you can definitely find a lot of room to practice. LEC, we have LEC, the really big weekend. 4 teams are already going to the World Championship guaranteed. What do you think about LEC's chances? We have G2, Mad Lions, BDS, Fnatic.
I have some hope in G2, depending on the group, to at least make it out.
So there's no group, right? There's going to be like a Swiss format where if you win, you face a winner. And then if you lose, you basically face a team with the same scoreline as you always.
Is it best of 3s from the start?
So it's best of 1s until it's a elimination match or qualification match. Then it's the best of 3. So
that's sick actually. Wow.
So I believe if you lose 3 best of 1s in a row, then you play a best of 3 to like see if you can. Like if you lose that best of 3, then you're out. And if you win, I think 3 best of 1s in a row, then you play a qualifying match. I think it's something. Maybe I'm wrong on the amount of BO1s, but it's basically that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of luck involved, definitely, in the Swiss format. I think the only blocker is that you can't face the same seed and you can't face your own region. So Like you could maybe qualify to the main event playing against North America and then Europe, and then like you can get lucky here.
Okay. Well, yeah, true. There's a new format that changes a lot, of course. I would say I have the most hope in G2, especially it's in Korea Worlds. I think they're gonna come in with a lot of fire to prove themselves, and I have hope for their individual level and their team play to improve more in Korea, to be able to compete more with the Asian teams. Otherwise, maybe Mad or Fnatic, if they have like a really good run now or build a lot of confidence and can translate it somewhat, I see some chances. But I don't know about BDS yet. Just they haven't played. I think 4 of them haven't played at Worlds yet.
Yep.
So it's gonna be a shock to them, probably a little bit, like the new environment. But maybe. But I would say like G2 and then Mad Fnatic, depending on their form, and then BDS probably. And NA teams I have not been following too closely. I mean, I watch some games with the boys sometimes, but otherwise, I have not been thinking too much about their strength level.
Okay.
I'm just happy for Igna, honestly. I think this guy, I'm so happy for him. He's really a great guy when I played with him, and I enjoyed playing with him a lot, and I'm just happy to see him win after such a long time.
No, for sure. Nah, that shit was pretty fucking hype. That energy beat C9. It's like C9 always frustrated me and Dom whenever we watched them because they seem to fucking get away with so much bullshit. And then like Berserker would like just clean up games, and there was no like signs of improvement or sign of like elevated intensity or a sign of it's of course it's like just taking from gameplay, so it could be wrong here, but no sign of like pride in the sense that we have won this region, how can we make ourselves still be better? And I get that from G2, even though they lost against Matt. I think that was like a preparationary gap in spring. I don't think there was ever a point where G2 wasn't the favorite to win a game this entire year, and then still they have managed to improve, you know. And C9 was just the opposite of that. It's like they kept winning games because like Berserker would like clean up the game, or they would like individually outplay somehow, and I'm happy that fucking bit them in the ass in the end, and Ignar took a fucking win. That's good shit. Now for the matchups that are coming up, we have BDS versus Fnatic. What do you think about this matchup, Elias?
I mean, the best of 5 between Fnatic and XL was a nail biter, I would say.
Yeah.
You could also consider XL that they were maybe stronger at this point than BDS. So it's hard to say where to place BDS exactly. I think the thing that made BDS strong, or like really strong for this shorter period amount of time, was a lot to do with the meta, and I'm not sure if this will translate as much now. But also Fnatic's playing with Wunder, right? And
Yep.
he's gonna do well, I think. So yeah, I would favor Fnatic slightly, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close series. But I mean, I think Humanoid has a lot of good champs going for him in this meta too. I think Rastok is a bit inconsistent sometimes, but he plays with confidence. I think Trimby had a really big series against XL. I think he had some criticism for his melee champs, but I liked a lot of the things he was doing.
Yeah, the game 5 was massive from Trimby. That was like a big change up, I think, in terms of like what he showed in his output. Yeah, that was a sharp game from Trimby, and to do that in a game 5 when he had like some stinkers on melee champs, I think is a very good sign for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you run down the players on both teams, it's hard to see like one role particularly sticking out for BDS being like necessarily stronger. And team play seemed more similar, I would say, or like no team had like exceptional team play so far. But yeah, we will see. It's the best of 5. Anything can happen, but I would slightly favor Fnatic. And also I want to say Labrov. when I play, like, he's so talented, I think, when I play with him in solo queue and stuff. I think he's a really, really good player. And I hope we get to see that even more. I think he had some nice Rakan games, but I think he's also really good.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm also in that same camp. I'm leaning slightly towards Fnatic. I think like Wunder is a very like pragmatic person, so like, I think he's very easy to like plug and play. I think like socially he like manages situations well, and like he can easily like see what he needs to be in a certain environment. It was funny though, like we were watching a mic check. I remember like he said, I remember him saying, if I played with Trimby, I would get insta headache. It's funny that this is gonna happen now. I'm curious how that's gonna pan out. It's like the Fnatic series against XL. It's weird because individually they are really, really good, but sometimes there's some moments of how low their ceiling is just showcases itself in the game. Like I think that's true for Razork and Trimby. It's like they can play insanely well, and I think that in terms of like overall gameplay level, they can reach higher highs than BDS. But sometimes it's like Humanoid also like just TPs into the enemy, dies on Jace, and then the game is like over. And like some silly shit just goes down, or like Trimby and Razork just rush. It's like, oh, Noah's coming out of base, and they just like walk way too fast, fight 4v5 for no reason at all. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, what is going on here? There's like this essence of inconsistency that Fnatic carry that make them a little bit scary to bet on. But I think BDS against SK, like SK didn't show a lot of resistance, but what I liked about that particular series, I think that was probably like the best series I saw from Nook. Like he had a strong spring when he played like Syndra and Cassio and Azir. That was like really good for him. But I think in this particular series, like he was much better than Certus. And I thought that was like potentially the only way in for SK, is like if Certus like pops off somehow on Akali or LeBlanc or something, but he completely shut him down, was the better player all the way around. I think Labro played fucking good. Sheo played really, really fucking good too. And Adam seemed also in his crazy form where he just hit the roams, and he was not like a liability as he was in some of the BO3s that they played in the regular split. So BDS.
Yeah, that was BDS favorite for sure versus SK.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other side, G2 versus Mad Lions. it's funny because in my mind, if there's any team that's gonna upset G2, it would be Mad. I said it even before the playoffs started, because Mad, just when they play good, they have a very high peak, but I don't think it's enough to beat G2 at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if the series starts getting, like, if it's a back and forth series, I can see Matt taking it. But if G2 comes out strong and they're like in their top form, I think it's going to be tough for Matt to match that. I agree.
I think Matt did good against XL, but even in those games, like they did fall very far behind, and XL didn't know like how to convert, and then eventually they were in positions where they like died on side and took poor fights and like overreached through choke points when they shouldn't, and like Mad was very good at punishing. I think that like Elioya was still has had a very quiet summer, and also like I think that series against XL was also quite like he didn't. There's like this level that I expect him to have. Like there's a level of impact that I expect Elioya to have that I haven't seen in a long time. So I'm hoping that comes up in this series against G2, because if it doesn't, then definitely this LEC finals in Montpellier is gonna be just deflated and easy.
Maybe we get a Fnatic G2 one, but
that could be a banger too. Yeah, that could be a banger. Fnatic versus Mad would be interesting, honestly. Fnatic versus Mad.
I think if Mad has confidence, I think they are gonna grind them out. But
yeah, I would lean towards Mad in that one, bro. When I heard rumors that they were winning
But
scrims, I was like, damn, Mad is on something.
I think Kazi is in pretty good form right now. I
Yeah.
think he got more somewhat more consistent. I think that was always his biggest weakness, but also one of his strengths. I think he was kind of a wild card player on AD carry. And if the team works around that if he has a really good game, then it looks really good. And if he has a bad game, he's still like participating. I think now he's more consistent. I think he's maturing out of the puberty phase. I think playing with Illy also makes the players he plays with shine as well in a certain way sometimes. So I like the bot lane. Mid Niski vs Humanoid is always really dependent, I think, on what opportunities Niski has in the game to impact it. I think Niski also is evolving as a player. I think he's more willing to, or not willing, like he's also more able to play the carry champs and do well on them, which was Humanoid's big strength, I think, or even an advantage at some points. Jungle is gonna be, I mean, Razok can be really, really good or play poorly. He plays good more than bad, but when he plays bad, it blows. And top lane is, I guess Wunder against Chasey, right? That's an interesting one.
I guess that would be the extension, yeah. Like I think Wunder is playing against two very different top laners if he qualifies. But I'm assuming, because it's like Oscarinin is going to have surgery. I imagine that he's going to be out for quite some time.
What happened with him? He has like a hand issue?
Yeah, like his hand is completely fucked. I don't know if you like during the series, like he was fucking holding his hand like up and like you could see that like he was in trouble, you know? But it was funny, shit. Like he had a fucking really good series. Like he had a Monster Gwen game and then like the game 5 on Poppy as well. Like he kind of fucking smurfed it.
His Poppy laning phase, I don't know. He's never behind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
His Poppy is insane. It's Chachi. Reborn into a Spanish Adonis. I don't know. He has like wrist issues or like his tendons, or you don't know.
It's like I know more than I should know, so I'm afraid I'm afraid of overspeaking because I don't know what's public, you know. So we leave it at that. He has some issues with his hand and needs surgery. I think that's the publicly available.
If two Fnatic top laners hit the table too hard, that would just be hilarious.
Oh man,
no one needs to know. I just hope he recovers.
What's a Fnatic Worlds Round without some drama coming into it? You know, it's like the COVID of last year. Jesus Christ, bro, it was mental. That was such a, I don't know. That was so surreal, bro. Like that was some of the most surreal shit. I can't believe it. We tested positive for COVID 3 times, and 3 times it was a false positive, man. In Mexico, in New York, everywhere, man. It was worldwide.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
I'm excited to see Wunder play. Like I'm hoping the approach. I could see Wunder approach would be it's like, oh, they're gonna open Renekton, they're gonna invite Renekton, and then it's gonna play Ornn, Gragas, and he's gonna have a good time. I think they should just invite the Renekton, play into the Renekton. I think this is the biggest Wunder classic. I'm curious how they're gonna like plug him in because I don't know how easy I can imagine Wunder playing like Jax currently, you know. I think him jumping back into the fray. I know he's been playing, but he hasn't been like super giga busy, you know. As I don't know like how sharp he can become within the span of like a week. But I think like Wunder Whippo would probably like the best plug and play players to put in top. So they're lucky that it's fucking top lane that they break a hand in. I guess probably AD carry, like the egg and the ramen is also something to do. But it was like support the jungle. That would be like, oh shit, or like mid. I think those would be mid. Like that would be like that would be fucking disastrous. Yeah, probably Fnatic Mad. I would also lean towards Mad there. I think. I agree with you on Karzi. I feel like Karzi and Niski were the most consistent players in the most recent time. It's like over the span of like the last 3 months after MSI. I think Niski and Kazuya played pretty damn good. I think in their phase when they were like dropping games and losing games, I thought Hilly and Elioya were not sharp at all. Like they just weren't there. But it seems to be always that trend. It's like whenever Mad Lions is underperforming, it seems like Elioya and Hilly, it looks like they've argued and they don't want to be on the same screen. Which I can so easily imagine, you know?
Me too, for some reason.
For some reason. Ugh.
You're going to be in Montpellier?
Yes, sir. I'm doing EMEA Masters Finals. So I'm hoping for the fans that K-Corp qualify. This would be sick. I think if K-Corp don't qualify, like the event just becomes so deflated, you know, because it's like it's half of France that would show up at the event, and K-Corp I think it's like I've like reviewed all of their games and it's just been fun to follow them. It's like I have history with Cabo, and then it's like Kaliste is a very interesting player. Have you ran into him in solo queue? Do you have an opinion on Kaliste?
Yeah, I watched the games. I play it versus him. It's not too much in my memory.
Okay.
I knew I did play against him before, but I never really paid attention. Now that he's playing in K-Corp and stuff, it's more. I can more attach a name to it. Exactly. Yeah. I think he's a good player. I think I see a lot of rough edges, but also a lot of good signs for me. That's gonna be interesting.
I like that. It's like I think a hallmark of an ADC that will become better, or like in general a player of that will become better, is it's like they are actively looking to like punish always. It's like rather than being okay with a status quo that they believe is winning, they're going to actively posture to like pressure. Like there's like, let's say there's a moment I remember there was like in the most recent there was a game they had to play the tiebreaker, and then he plays the tiebreaker, and there's a moment where he spots two people on a ward just go in the wrong direction, and then alone with Zeri just pushes forward into four people, begins to hit them just because someone did like just a pathing error, you know. And small things like that, then you know that this person is actively looking to become really good rather than be satisfied with, oh, I'm going even, I can carry the game, you know. I think this is like this shows like a good future in my mind always when I see this from a player. I think that's definitely an important aspect. I also think Taragamas has been finding his own form more again. I feel like in LEC, in Excel, it was like really, really bad how Patrick and him played and how they clicked. Of course, the whole team was exploding, right? But yes.
I see he's playing more confident in solo queue too. I like how he plays more now. I think he's playing better.
No, lane phase wise, they seem very sharp. Like they at least when they're playing against some of the other ERL bot lanes. Like they against Bao and Parus, I think there was like one game the Kaiser Alistar like mismanaged the wave. They like crashed the wave 2, and then like Kaiser Alistar were full HP and got to like bounce the wave back, and then they were like full HP with pot.
They killed in that game.
And they just like one shot Zeri because Zeri like had no pot and like had lost 200 HP. Like that was like one moment, and then there's like small inaccuracies like that, but I think then there was like the flip side where they played like Nyla Senna, which was like monstrous.
That should have
nasty.
not went this way. This should have not went this way. I saw the kill. It was crazy. I don't know why they're doing this. But
I like it. I like the little Senna auto attack buffer, you know, that showed the hallmark of a good Senna play.
I don't know why Alice wants to fight level 3 like this, and then actually they could have won it as well and killed one, I think, but it is what it is. I mean, there's levels to it, but yeah, I see a lot of. There's definitely good things I see in players from ERL.
Yep. There was like other moments too with Kaliste in particular. I remember like when an affiliates player is willing to push forward and like make the enemy force like for use spells on you rather than being afraid of the spell inherently, you know? There's like some ADs that are out there, they're like, oh, enemy Syndra has E, so I'm going to play so far away from the Syndra E because I'm afraid of getting hit by it, rather than pushing it forward and inviting it because they are the person that has the highest range on the team and they need to be the one actually forcing the fight, you know?
You just killed a lot of AD carry players listening to this podcast, I think.
There's very few that are like this, honestly. I remember your last game on Aphelios, you tried your best, man. You tried your best.
Yeah. There's moments and moments, for sure. When you want to do that. But I understand your point, 100%, yeah.
It's like AD carries need to be willing to engage, I think. It's like when you're playing Lucian, Aphelios, you need to be willing to engage. You need to be willing to use your buttons, you know? I think it's important.
If it's the game fault, you have to do it sometimes, for sure, yeah.
For sure. But yes, I'm in Montpellier. I'm going to be in the semis. They didn't invite me for the finals. I think everything was already set, but I'm going to be there in person, enjoy it. And maybe someone gets sick. Maybe someone trips in the lobby. And then maybe I can go in on the finals. It would be cool.
Nice. Yeah, the whole Vitality team is going to be there too. So.
Oh, okay.
We can see each other.
Okay, cool. I haven't seen you in shit. The last time I saw you was
after we lost.
Was not a good day. Shit. Okay, yeah. Then it's gonna be good. We see each other. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up? Something we haven't covered? Time fucking flew, brother. We've talked for 2.5 hours.
Nothing in particular. I mean, just gonna do the work, enjoy my time with my family when I have the opportunity, of course. Yeah.
Earlier sleep is not done, yeah? You're gonna keep charging, yeah? You're gonna keep fucking going, yeah?
Yeah, it just started.
100%. It's crazy how like this year for me, it feels, it's just because I'm not competing, it feels like my competitive time is so distant, you know? Because usually when I have been in competition, I feel like everything melts together and time fucking flies fast. But this year, time has gone so slow, I feel like. It's weird. I think I just miss the stakes, you know? Miss the responsibility and the craziness of the whole, you know?
Okay, next year we're gonna make our reunion somewhere.
Yes,
wherever.
Sir. Yes, sir. We shall see what the future brings. Okay, Elias, I catch you on the co-streams, the co-views. Maybe we do.
If I have a microphone at hand, Paula was so nice of her to borrow me this.
Bro, just fucking buy one for the love of God, man.
I have like 3 laying in like the storage room. I have to check them out, but it's a long way.
Bro, Paula, please put this on his chore list. Like, put this on his list. Expand the 20 minutes to 25 minutes. Let him go to the storage and get a microphone. This is insanity. You've had this shit microphone for the last fucking 5 years. As long as I've known you, you've had this shit microphone.
Yeah, I need a better mic for sure.
100%. Okay.
All right.
Elias, I wish you all the best. I see you in Montpellier, yeah?
Yeah, see you. Thank you for the conversation. It was fun.
My pleasure, brother. Take care, my man.
Okay, bye-bye.